for the invitation to speak here. What I'd like to talk about today is the disappearance of Boran meditation during modern reforms. First, I should just say what's meant by Boran meditation. The term Boran, old or traditional in Khmer and Thai, was given to this type of meditation in the 20th century, as this type of meditation was being replaced by new text-based methods developed in Thailand and also introduced from Burma. So Boran meditation is the earlier form of meditation in Southeast Asia. It's based on the Abhidhamma analysis of the path to enlightenment, and its central practice is the internalization of qualities on the path to enlightenment into the interior or the womb of the practitioner through the incorporation of key attributes of the Buddhist path. The most notable feature of this meditation to outsiders is the way it uses spheres of light to bring the qualities of meditation down into the body and incorporates these into the body. These spheres of light are represented in manuscripts and depictions of this meditation. The tradition also uses the double meaning of language, so very common phrases in Pali, such as Arahang, Namo Tassa, Namo Buddhaya, are equated with other concepts in Buddhism. So the three syllables Arahang may be equated with the three breaths, or the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, something like that. So these sounds and the visual nimitta, the lights, are used to bring the qualities into the body, and then through extensive combination of the qualities with the physical constituents of the body, the qualities are embedded in the practitioner. And this uses a combination of mathematics, combinatorics, and traditional medicine. I'm going to be talking about this combination with traditional meditation, traditional medicine later in the talk. The practice of meditation is used for, excuse me, for a variety of purposes. So, of course, it's important for realization of enlightenment, but it's also used in healing and in protection. So there's quite an overlap with other practices, especially with medicine. I wanted to just quickly say about the relationship between Boran meditation and Dhammakaya meditation. So did Luangpo Sot practice Boran meditation? He studied at Watts, where Boran meditation was taught, and you can see similarities in the practice. So there are different traditions of Boran meditation, and you can see similarities between those and the meditation practiced by Dhammakaya. As you can see with this diagram where he's showing the introduction of the lights, the nimitta, into the body. Now, in the 18th century, at the beginning of the European colonial period in the region, Boran meditation was the dominant practice in Cambodia, Laos, Sri Lanka, and Thailand, as you can see from this map. So the areas shaded in pink are where we have definite evidence of the practice of Boran meditation, usually through manuscripts, occasionally through inscriptions, and also through teacher lineages. So I'm going to come back to these maps as we watch the disappearance of Boran meditation in the modern period. You can see, though, here it's quite pervasive. And it was also important in the international networks of Buddhism at the time. So this image here is an image seen from the top of the body of the light, the nimitta, coming into the body. And it's taken from an 18th century Sri Lankan manuscript. These manuscripts were written by Sri Lankan monks studying under Thai monks who took a mission of meditation practice to Sri Lanka from Ayutthaya in the 18th century. I want to now think about what meditation is in order to understand why this particular meditation disappeared in the 19th and 20th centuries. Meditation is essentially a technology of transformation, a technique for inculcating change. So the premise of Buddhism, as we know, is impermanence and that change is inevitable. But the premise of the Buddhist path is that change can be directed, that positive change is possible. And so meditation is the technology that allows that possible change, a positive change. So meditation then is a technology of transformation to deliver positive change in the individual. So in my research, what I looked at was other technologies in the culture at the same time as Boran meditation. Technologies that may be for a similar or different purpose, but have parallel methods of inducing change. The first and most obvious, and this is obvious from Boran terminology, is Abhidhamma. And the detailed Abhidhamma analysis of the path is found in Boran meditation, including the detailed analysis of the combination of causes that lead to change. So in the case of meditation, to positive change. And so our source for that is the Pali Canon. So we can see similarities between the mathematics and the concepts in the Abhidhamma Pitaka and the mathematics and concepts in Boran meditation. Another technology for inculcating change is medicine, and this again has strong overlaps with Boran meditation, particularly obstetrics. So obstetrics is the treatment of the embryo within the womb, and in traditional medicine, they developed a practice of bringing the medicine through the mother's nostril down into the body. Right hand for a male child, left hand for a female child. And we see this in Boran meditation as well, the right hand, left hand distinction, the use of these energy centers in the body. There are also other similarities, including the shared cosmology, but I won't go into them here. Now, the evidence for these practices is found in medical texts from India between the 1st and the 6th century of the Common Era. Another very important science that was highly developed in Asia was grammar. Generative grammar, how you change from a basic set of roots and endings into Pali and Sanskrit language. And again, we find an overlap between grammatical understanding of change and Boran meditation in what tends to now be called letter alchemy, where you have a series of processes of change using language, and the new qualities are introduced to a base which remains, has a continuity from the past. Similarly, when we bring in the qualities in meditation, it brings in change into the body, but the body also has continuity from the past. And the grammar that overlaps with Boran meditation begins from the 4th century before the Common Era. Other technologies are mathematics and chemistry. I won't go into these now, but I want to turn now to the next, to what happened to these during the colonial period. Because all these traditional sciences during the colonial period become affected by the introduction of new technologies. Abhidhamma initially became emphasized during the colonial period, and it's maintained in Burma. Elsewhere, Because of changes in education, expertise in Abhidhamma was reduced. So that's one science that overlaps with Boran meditation that was undermined. Medicine, and that's the topic I'm going to focus on today, was particularly undermined. There was a strong competition with medicine brought from the West and traditional medicine. So traditional medicine, particularly at the centres of power, became lost or marginalised. The science of grammar that was prevalent in Asia was very unfamiliar to the West, and it wasn't really appreciated till much later. So the generative grammar we have in Asia only began to have a big impact on science in the West in the 1950s. So 2,000 years of development in Asia, and then in the 1950s we have it in Europe. And so it wasn't appreciated, and again was almost completely lost in the Theravada area. Again, mathematics and chemistry also altered or replaced by Western models in the modern era. Okay, I want to now focus on the parallels between medicine and Boran meditation. There are texts that combine both. So the Sangarat Sukaitern, he had, there are manuscripts of his which include the application of Boran meditation to healing. But I want to talk about the more general correlation. So in traditional medicine, we have a combination of the 3 dosa, the 3 humours, its translation in English, and the 5 elements of the body which combine. And an imbalance of them causes illness. Working out all the possible combinations, so using mathematics, and the degrees possible allows for the selection of the appropriate pharmaceutical preparation. In other words, when the doctor has worked out the imbalance causing the illness, he can apply the appropriate medicine, and this medicine can be delivered in a variety of ways, but including through the intranasal cavity. In Boran meditation, we're dealing with the basic concepts of the problem, the human condition, according to Buddhism, which is the 3 fires of Lobha, Moha, and Dosa, and their combination with the 5 elements of the body, causing spiritual illness. So meditation is the delivery of the various appropriate medicines, i.e. the meditation practices, to address the different manifestations of these 3 fires or weaknesses. In Boran meditation, this is delivered through the intranasal cavity. So it's this specific delivery method that I want to focus on now, this delivery through the intranasal cavity, because we can see that as things disappear from medicine, so the meditation is also affected. Just to remind you, though, of some of the overlaps with some images I think will be familiar to many of you. So you have on the left side a Dhammakaya image showing the bases of the mind within the body. And these same pathways are used in traditional medicine to deliver medicine into the body, but also into the new baby, the embryo in the womb. So if treating a baby in the womb using traditional medicine, we would use either the right nostril for men or left nostril for a female child to deliver medicine into the womb. And here on the other side, you can see a Boran meditation picture, again showing some of the mind bases in the body, also familiar in medicine. So I wanted to focus on one specific example of medical treatment and look at what happened to it during the colonial and modern period. And the reason I took the example of smallpox is because it's very well documented, and also because of the way it is treated. The image you see in front of you is from a Chinese manuscript, a manual on the treatment of smallpox, and you can see the person suffering smallpox. You can also see the implements used in the delivery of the treatment of smallpox. So smallpox prevention in traditional immunization practice was through the introduction of a strain of the virus through the nostril. So here you can see in the middle one is using a jar to inhale, and on the other side you've got an implement for introducing the medicine into the nostril. Okay, I'm now going to compare traditional smallpox prevention with the Western vaccination. The development of smallpox prevention in Asia was quite advanced, and so from the first millennium of the Common Era to the early 20th century, there was a practice of inoculation that introduced the weaker strain of smallpox in advance of an epidemic. And the delivery methods were varied, but one of them was, as I said, the pulverized scab of someone who'd survived the disease, so a weakened form of the virus, into the nasal. There were risks with this. There was a risk of it going wrong, so of actually inducing the stronger strain of smallpox and causing death. And there was the need to isolate people who had been inoculated in this way in order to avoid starting a new epidemic. So it was risky. But there were advantages. There was no risk of any other disease, and the immunization lasted for life. And so people took the risk, if there was an epidemic coming, in order to survive that epidemic. I want to now compare that with the Western practice. So in the early 18th century, Europe and America gained the ancient inoculation practices from Asia, either from Asia directly or through Africa. But at the very end of the 18th century, vaccination was discovered in Britain by Jenner. Vaccination, the term vacina, comes from the word for cow, and it means introducing a virus that comes from cows, called cowpox. It's a different virus, but it's related to smallpox, and so it makes one immune to smallpox. The delivery method was initially through a scab on the skin of someone affected by cowpox to a cut on the skin of somebody else, or through cow lymph into the blood. There were risks. There were risks from the death of infection. There was also the possibility of contamination with other diseases, such as syphilis, the great pox. And initially it wasn't clear how long it lasted, so people had to have repeat vaccinations. The advantage of it was there was no risk of smallpox or a new epidemic. So up until the 18th century then, it was the traditional method through a weaker strain of smallpox through the nostril that led to immunity to smallpox. But then at the end of the 18th century, there was a discovery in Britain that led to an attempt to prevent smallpox through vaccination. But there were problems with it. Okay, now I want to just talk about those problems in terms of rivalry. So there was rivalry during the colonial period between Western and traditional medicine. And that was both in Asia and Europe. So in Europe, there were riots against accepting the new type of vaccination. But Western modern medics assumed that vaccination was superior, even while admitting problems. Now, I think the assumption was partly based on the success in Europe, but it was also based on an assumption that the West was superior to the East. But when they tried to introduce it in Asia, there were big problems. There were difficulties of securing stable lymphs from calves. So the actual medium through which the vaccination was supplied didn't work. And there was also a big problem with contamination through skin and intravenous methods. So people died from infections or got worse diseases. So there was a lot of resistance to the taking of vaccination, and even when vaccination was applied, sometimes it went wrong. Now I want to focus more closely on the issue of delivery of medicine through the nostril. One of the things that Western medics at the time didn't understand was intranasal delivery of medicines. There are advantages of intranasal delivery because it bypasses blood infection and it also bypasses the gut destruction. So if one tries to put something directly into the vein, into the blood, there's a possibility of infection. And if one tries to eat a medicine, particularly a virus, it's likely to be destroyed by the gut. So it actually took nearly 100 years, from the 1830s to the 1920s, to develop a successful vaccination using the cowpox. And they didn't consider, the Western medics didn't consider using the traditional method of introducing vaccination through the nostril. So, although intranasal delivery was present in Asia from the first millennium, in the West, intranasal delivery of medicines was only adopted in Western-derived modern medicine in the 1980s. So it's a very recent development. And now, it's part of cutting-edge research into the delivery of medications, particularly for illnesses affecting the brain, such as Alzheimer's disease, because if one puts medicine through the intranasal cavity, it can bypass the blood-brain barrier. So it's very important work. But back in the colonial period, Western medics didn't realize this, and they ignored this delivery method. Why have I been looking so much at smallpox vaccination and intranasal delivery? It's just one example where I think you can see parallels in the uptake of Western medicine and other types of technology, and the loss of traditional technologies, including Boran meditation. So before the modern era, the techniques used in Boran meditation were reinforced in the culture by techniques used in other technologies or sciences of transformation. I've given the examples of Abhidhamma, medicine, grammar, mathematics, and alchemy or traditional chemistry. We can look at all these in detail and see how well they reinforce the techniques used in Boran meditation for delivering change. In the modern era, these traditional technologies that overlapped with Boran meditation were suppressed or abandoned. So what happens then is that Boran meditation methods are no longer reinforced by other technologies in the culture. It stands isolated, and that means that at points of reform, Boran meditation is deselected. So what we have when we have two cultures coming together, often we have the selection of what's similar between them and the emphasis on that. And what I'm looking at here is the opposite, where two things do not relate to each other. In this case, Boran meditation, and it becomes deselected. So I want to now return to our map. So as you remember that the pink on this side represents the extent of Boran meditation in the 18th century. On the other side, you've got the extent of Western medicine. This has not made an impact in the area at this time. But from the end of the 19th century, particularly to the 1920s, we see Western medicine spreading. In fact, Thailand was one of the main avenues of this because of important investment in research on vaccination and things like and other types of immunization in Thailand. And because of the centralized organization of Thailand, it was possible for the Thai government to spread new types of immunization around the country. What we see in parallel is that throughout Thailand and in the parts of Cambodia around Phnom Penh and Battambang, where there's also Western medicine, we see Boran meditation becoming weakened. This means that the strongholds of Boran meditation at this period are those areas least affected by Western medicine and other technologies, so Laos and Cambodia. So the strongholds then of Boran meditation before the 1970s remained Laos and Cambodia. But in the 1970s, there were Marxist revolutions in these countries that profoundly affected the practice of Buddhism. So exactly where Boran meditation was practiced, we have the undermining of Buddhism, and in some cases, the complete disruption of Buddhist practice. And what happens later is that in Laos, we see no restoration of Boran meditation. And in Cambodia, just short pockets. But in fact, Burmese Vipassana then becomes more popular in Cambodia also. And in Thailand, we just have a few remaining practice traditions of Boran meditation. So practice traditions are rare. So if we look from the 18th century forward, if we watch the pink slowly disappearing to just a few pockets of Boran meditation, now practiced mainly by quite elderly people, and being replaced where meditation is of interest by newer forms of meditation. So, in conclusion and summary then, what we find is that we have Boran meditation, which uses orthodox Abhidhamma from the Theravada tradition, yet it applies delivery methods also found in other technologies. So it's not the concept of what it means to become enlightened that's changed, it's the understanding of how one can induce change in the body. How do you deliver the medicine or the meditation objects into the body? So it applied delivery methods also found in other technologies, and those other technologies in the culture reinforced Boran meditation. Yeah, there was a resonance between them and they reinforced each other. But once the other technologies were suppressed or became less popular, Boran meditation also disappears. We then have the remaining strongholds of Boran meditation severely affected by the Marxist revolutions of the 1970s in Cambodia and Laos. So we have still remaining many meditation manuscripts, and increasingly we find new manuscripts of evidence for Boran meditation, but we have very little practice still available. So I just wanted to point out what I think important avenues for research are within Buddhist studies first. First, we need to document the large amount of manuscript evidence for Boran meditation. Some work has been done on this, including by some people in this room, and I'm very grateful for the work they have done, including Dr. Kitchai's recent work. We also need to record the oral tradition of the few, usually quite elderly teachers, so that we can have the maximum amount of evidence about the variety of practice of this tradition. That's in Buddhist studies. In cognitive science, it's obvious that really so much has come out of studying Vipassana meditation, and the benefits that can be derived from that meditation for non-Buddhists and Buddhists alike, it would be very interesting if the same could be applied to Boran meditation practices. Obviously, this is way beyond the scope of my ability, but it might mean that we find benefits from Boran meditation as we have done from Vipassana meditation. Finally, I just wanted to point out just some of the research has been done recently, including the final two there. So the work on smallpox was done by Atsuko Naono of SOAS in London, and Kichai Okasame has recently published some of the manuscripts relating to this tradition and analysed them. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that research. Thank you.
ขณะนี้นะครับเราก็จะได้รับชมวิดีโอผลงานของทั้ง3 มหาวิทยาลัยนะครับที่ได้ทำงานร่วมกันในการวิจัยเรื่องสมาธิในการวิจัยเรื่องพุทธศาสนาแบบโบราณ
ชมพูทวีปและต่อมาพระพุทธศาสนาก็ได้แผ่ขยายไปปักหลักยังภูมิภาคต่างๆทั่วโลกอันยังสันติสุขให้บังเกิดขึ้นแก่ชาวโลกจากการเข้าถึงสันติสุขที่อยู่ภายในจนกระทั่งถึงยุคปัจจุบันก็ได้บังเกิดเหตุการณ์ประวัติศาสตร์น่าสำคัญที่นับได้ว่าเป็นการปักหลักพระพุทธศาสนาแห่งโลกตะวันตกด้วยเหตุการณ์สำคัญดังต่อไปนี้
จากวันสำคัญทางประวัติศาสตร์ในวันที่ 27 เดือนสิงหาคม ปีพุทธศักราช 2554 มูลนิธิธรรมกายและทีมงานวิจัยของ 3 สถาบันการศึกษาชั้นนำของโลกได้แก่ห้องสมุดโบเรียนแห่งมหาวิทยาลัยออกฟอร์ดมหาวิทยาลัย King College ลอนดอนและมหาวิทยาลัย University College Cork ไอร์แลนด์ได้ลงนามความร่วมมือทางวิชาการเพื่อมีจุดมุ่งหมายที่จะทำงานวิจัยด้านพระพุทธศาสนาเถรวาทที่มีมาตั้งแต่ดั้งเดิมภายใต้หัวข้อโครงงานพระพุทธศาสนาแบบโบราณความต่อเนื่องและความหลากหลายงานวิจัยภายใต้โครงการดังกล่าวทำให้เกิดการพัฒนาด้านความรู้พระพุทธศาสนาเถรวาทโดยเฉพาะในเรื่องความรู้เกี่ยวกับการทำสมาธิที่มีมาตั้งแต่ยุคโบราณและมีหลักฐานบันทึกยืนยันที่สืบค้นได้ในหลายประเทศทั้งในที่เอเชียใต้เอเชียตะวันออกเฉียงใต้และที่อื่นๆหลังจากที่ได้ร่วมลงนามในระยะ 3 ปีที่ผ่านมาทีมงานได้ทำงาน 3 แห่งในหลากหลายรูปแบบเพื่อมุ่งเน้นการวางรากฐานงานวิจัยด้านสมาธิเถรวาทซึ่งแห่งแรกคือห้องสมุดโบเรียนมหาวิทยาลัยออกฟอร์ดเป็นแหล่งที่เก็บรวบรวมความสำคัญทางหลักฐานคัมภีร์ของพระพุทธศาสนาไว้เป็นจำนวนมาก
จริงๆแล้วเนี่ยเราทำงานเพียงแค่คนเดียวไม่ได้นะครับเราจำเป็นต้องมีการทำงานเป็นทีมนะครับและการที่จะทำกิจกรรมเพื่อให้เกิดการพัฒนาการต่อพุทธศาสนาในโลกตะวันตกมากที่สุดก็คือการทำงานที่มีเน็ตเวิร์กนะครับนี่ก็เป็นที่มาที่ไปที่ว่าทำไมเราถึงมีการเริ่มงานกันหลายที่นะครับไม่ใช่เพียงแค่มหาวิทยาลัยเดียวแต่ว่ามีการทำงานร่วมกัน หลายมหาวิทยาลัยนะครับอย่างในกรณีของที่หอสมุดบอดเลียนมหาวิทยาลัยออกฟอร์ดนะครับณที่หอสมุดบอดเลียนมีความพร้อมหลายๆอย่างนะครับไม่ว่าจะเป็นเรื่องของระบบฐานข้อมูลหรือการจัดทำแคตตาล็อกแล้วก็มีผู้เชี่ยวชาญที่มีความรู้เกี่ยวกับเรื่องการค้นหาข้อมูลหรือหลักฐานต่างๆเนี่ยได้มากและในหอสมุดบอดเลียนเองก็จะมีระบบการสืบค้นข้อมูลที่เชื่อมโยงกับหอสมุดที่เคมบริดจ์และหอสมุด British Library นะครับดังนั้นในหอสมุดบอดเลียนเองก็มีความสำคัญในเชิงการค้นหาข้อมูลและการจัดทำแคตตาล็อก
นอกจากงานจัดทำแคตตาล็อกทีมงานได้จัดทำการจัดเก็บข้อมูลคัมภีร์และเอกสารโบราณที่เกี่ยวกับกรรมฐานโบราณช่วงสมัยสุโขทัยตอนปลายถึงยุคล่าอาณานิคมโดยเน้นการบันทึกจัดเก็บข้อมูลคัมภีร์ที่มีเนื้อหายั่งยืนและการปฏิบัติสมาธิแบบโบราณในประเทศต่างๆหลักฐานข้อมูลดังกล่าวได้รวบรวมจากหลายประเทศเช่นคัมภีร์ภาษาสิงหนในเรื่องสมาธิคัมภีร์อักษรขอมที่วัดราชประสิทธารามวัดหงส์รวมถึงวัดต่างๆในประเทศไทยคัมภีร์ที่พบในแม่ฮ่องสอนที่เวียงจันทร์ในประเทศลาวและในพนมเปญกัมพูชาทีมงานได้ค้นพบหลักฐานด้านคัมภีร์รวมถึงเอกสารโบราณอีกจำนวนมากในหลากหลายภาษาสมัยเก่าที่ช่วยยืนยันเรื่องราวการปฏิบัติสมาธิแบบโบราณ
We've been very lucky to have support of different funders to be able to bring such diversity together and inform each other's research. And what I'd like to do is really just carry on doing that, particularly looking at underreported Buddhism and to look at important subjects like meditation from diverse angles. So that's what I'm hoping to do here. And I think it's been a very promising start with lots of collaboration, lots of findings. Findings coming from all sorts of strange places. So our latest finding to do with meditation actually came by somebody looking at food. You would never expect it, but because we're here together, it can come together. And now we're looking at ideas of nourishment, non-physical nourishment, and there's an overlap there with understandings of how different experiences in early jhana in meditation inform and keep the practitioner, inform the experience of the practitioner and keep the practitioner going throughout meditation. So that's what I would like to carry on doing, and having this variety working together so that we keep informing each other in these unexpected ways.
จากการสนับสนุนของมูลนิธิธรรมกายและความร่วมมือกันระหว่างองค์กรทางวิชาการต่างๆจึงเป็นเหตุให้มีการตีพิมพ์วารสารผลงานหนังสือทางวิชาการด้านพระพุทธศาสนาอย่างมากมายดังเช่นผลงานวิจัยของศาสตราจารย์ไบรอัน บอกกิ้งหัวหน้าภาควิชาการศึกษาศาสนามหาวิทยาลัย University College Cork และนักวิชาการชั้นนำ25 ท่านจากประเทศต่างๆทั่วโลกโครงงานวิจัยเรื่องกรรมฐานแบบโบราณของศาสตราจารย์ดรเคทครอสบีและทีมงานได้รับทุนจากหน่วยงานของรัฐบาลในอังกฤษคือ Arts and Humanities Research Council และได้รับการยกย่องว่าเป็นผลงานดีเด่นสูงสุดเล่มแรกคือหนังสือพระพุทธศาสนาเถรวาทของศาสตราจารย์เคทครอสบีได้รับการตีพิมพ์โดยสำนักพิมพ์วิลลี่แบล็กเวลซึ่งเป็นสำนักพิมพ์ชั้นนำของโลกหนังสือเล่มนี้มีข้อมูลที่ทันสมัยและบริบูรณ์กว่าทุกเล่มที่ผ่านมาโดยเนื้อหาของหนังสือมีการกล่าวถึงพระพุทธศาสนาเถรวาทในหนังสือได้สอดแทรกเรื่องราวการปฏิบัติสมาธิแบบโบราณวิชาธรรมกายรวมถึงเหตุการณ์สำคัญในปัจจุบันเช่นการทำพระไตรปิฎกฉบับธรรมชัยรวมถึงการยกย่องคุณยายมหารัตนอุบาสิกาจันทร์ขนนกยุงอีกด้วย
At the moment, what I'm focused on is Abhidhamma study in Burma, but also I look at meditation and Abhidhamma as well. So, which means that one of the current research or current paper that I'm working on is looking at how Abhidhamma is applied in meditation practice, especially in Buddhist Burmese meditation traditions in Burma. So I look at various existing Burmese meditation traditions and the Abhidhamma aspect of it, of their practice and the technique and the terms that they use, Abhidhamma terms that they use in those practices. In fact, my PhD thesis actually showed that in Burmese meditation traditions, what they do is they use a lot of Abhidhamma terms. And one of the aspects that I looked at in my thesis is showing how that is applied in meditation techniques. So
this group, or like team study, group study, helps me a lot, stimulates a lot my thinking with my research. My research mainly is about Chinese Buddhist history. My main research interest is about Ming Buddhism between 14th to 17th century. Currently, I'm working on a paper about monastic education. I'm going to publish soon. Also, I'm working on another paper about a Chakma Buddhist monk who was the prince of Chakma kingdom. Then he became an abbot in Bodhgaya. Eventually, via Nepal and Tibet, he reached in China and worked as a preceptor of the Chinese emperor. Research, please.
In these days, I mean, with several specialists, I'm studying and researching about Dhammakaya, the text. So that means I'm focusing on some specific text. So it's about Theravada Buddhism and Theravada Abhidhamma. So actually, we have only the Chinese text, I mean Chinese translation of it. So in these days, I translate the Chinese text into English with comparing to Pali text also. Yeah, that's why.
เหตุการณ์สำคัญในหน้าประวัติศาสตร์พระพุทธศาสนาดังกล่าวนี้นับว่าเป็นแสงธรรมแห่งพระพุทธศาสนาที่ได้ส่องสว่างขจรกระจายไปยังดินแดนตะวันตกและยังแผ่ขยายไปยังภูมิภาคต่างๆทั่วโลกเพื่อเป็นที่พึ่งให้แก่ชาวโลกโดยไม่จำกัดเชื้อชาติศาสนาและเผ่าพันธุ์เพื่อให้เหล่ามวลมนุษยชาติได้พบกับสันติสุขภายในอย่างแท้จริงภารกิจอันยิ่งใหญ่เช่นนี้ย่อมไม่สามารถสำเร็จได้ด้วยบุคคลเพียงคนเดียวแต่ย่อมเกิดจากความร่วมมือร่วมใจกันของเหล่าพุทธบริษัทสี่ดังคำขวัญที่พระเดชพระคุณพระเทพยานมหามุนีหลวงพ่อธรรมชโยได้กล่าวไว้ว่าพุทธบริษัทสี่ต้องเป็นหนึ่งเดียวกันเหมือนดวงตะวันที่มีดวงเดียว
ทุกท่านก็ได้รับชมวิดีโอเกี่ยวกับผลงานที่เกิดขึ้นไปเรียบร้อยแล้วนะครับสำหรับงานอภิปรายของท่านศาสตราจารย์ดร.เคครอสบี้ในวันนี้นะครับก็เป็นตัวอย่างหนึ่งของงานวิจัยที่เกิดขึ้นนะครับซึ่งจริงๆแล้วงานวิจัยที่เกิดขึ้นนั้นมีอย่างหลากหลายรูปแบบมากเพียงแต่ว่าวันนี้มีเวลาเพียงแค่40นาทีในการอภิปรายนะครับวันนี้ตอนณเวลานี้นะครับก็เหลือเวลาอีกประมาณ10นาทีหรือถ้าท่านผู้ใดมีคำถามที่จะสอบถามก็ขอเรียนสอบถามได้เลยนะครับ
ครับท่านใดมีคำถามสอบถามมีด้านนี้ยกมือนะครับ
Hello, Kate. What you're saying about the decline of Boran meditation, how widespread was it in the Ayutthaya period? I mean, what is the narrative of decline?
As with studying any subject, we mainly have evidence from court. So we have manuscripts that were either the property of the Sangharat or in the different regions, or manuscripts used by monks sponsored by the court, or even sometimes, so for instance in Sri Lanka, we have manuscripts that were written for one of the queens of Kandy. So as far as we can tell from court derived evidence, it was the dominant practice at court and amongst the Sangha hierarchy. We don't know what local practices at an everyday level were, so all we can say it was the dominant practice. We can't say what else was going on. We just don't have the evidence for that.
Just to add then, the manuscripts, say, from the 19th century, they've probably not been properly studied. So laying in some royal temples or other places in Bangkok, maybe there's a load of Boran meditation manuals.
Yes, when we look, we find more and more, in fact. So our earliest manuscripts that we can date are from the mid-18th century, but there are a lot of manuscripts in Bangkok, for a start. Also, if you travel in Cambodia, you sometimes come across people that risk their lives during the Marxist Revolution to preserve the manuscripts. And they're not really sure what to do with their manuscripts, so it's quite a task, both finding and documenting them, and it's quite an important area of research, which I think is beyond the scope of a small team. I think it would be good if this was a broadened out area of research for people to undertake. Yes, you're absolutely right. I think the difficulty with doing research in this area is the combination of languages and technical skills needed. Pali, various types of Thai and Khmer and Lao, but also the Abhidhamma terminology makes it quite demanding, so people need Abhidhamma studies as well.
Okay, well, maybe we have the resources at the Dhammakaya temple to do this.
Certainly there have been some interesting recent contributions from researchers from Dhammakaya. Yes, that's true.
มีท่านใดต่อเนื่องได้เลยนะครับมีเวลาประมาณ10 นาทีนะครับ
Venerable Pavitai from Wat Dhammakaya. The question is about the idea of the technology evolution, and you mentioned about grammar. And may you explain it how we define grammar as a part of technology?
Yes. Well, the particular type of grammar I'm talking about is generative grammar, where you start with some basic elements, fundamental elements, and you develop language from that. That form of grammar that started in the first millennium before the Common Era in India was extremely important in the development of science. There is one theory that it actually led to the discovery or invention, whichever way you look at it, of the zero, the placeholder zero, so the number 0 in India. The development of generative grammar in the West, from the mid-20th century onwards, was important in computing science. So although we may think of grammar as being about the study of language, actually generative grammar is much bigger than that. And there was a very strong focus on looking at how substitution works, so how change works by introducing new elements. And that's where we have the relationship between grammar, generative grammar, and meditation. Very, very interesting, very difficult to follow, but not just about language, but really about the whole scientific culture. Thank you.
ครับอีก 5 นาทีสุดท้ายนะครับท่านใดมีคำถามครับ
Any more questions?
ทางนี้นะครับอย่ายกมือสักนิดหนึ่งครับขอบพระคุณครับ
It's fascinating, Professor Kate.
Thank you.
But what happened to the first Buddhist era until the present study that you have? Is there any other evidence in the earlier scripture on this subject? That's first question.
Yeah.
Can I have two? The other one is a fascinating number 7. Is part of the mathematical studies in Buddhism also. Thank you.
As to the first question, for Boran meditation directly, I think the earliest concrete evidence is an inscription from Pitsanalok, 16th century. But you can see other aspects that go right back. So in the video you saw me mentioning a recent finding that came from the study of food. And this is, there are conceptions in the canon about non-material sustenance that has some overlap with first level jhana experience as used in Boran meditation. Okay, so there are aspects that we can trace back, and that's a very new discovery, so that's what I and my colleagues are currently working on. So aspects you can take back. One of the difficulties about trying to trace Boran meditation otherwise is that it is a practice tradition rather than a textual tradition. So in the Visuddhimagga in the 5th century, although we have the manual of Visuddhimagga tells us a lot about meditation, but it also mentions secret meditation manuals that go between teacher and student. And that is the transmission that one expects for meditation. So it's very hard to see what evidence there would be. Another reason it's difficult to follow is that the terminology in Boran meditation is the same as the terminology in Abhidhamma. So there's not distinct terminology that we can find. And really what's distinctive about Boran meditation, I mean, in a way it's just standard Abhidhamma Buddhism, but what's distinct is these delivery methods. So it's not the concepts, it's the way these concepts are applied in the body that is distinctive. And so that's quite hard to track down. Yeah. So we have different types of evidence for different aspects, but not something saying, here I am, a Boran meditation practice from the time of the Buddha till the 16th century. At the moment, we don't have that. Who knows what will come out with further study of commentaries, which have been understudied, really, and it may be that we'll be lucky and find further manuscript and inscriptional evidence, but I don't know. So that's in answer to your first question. Your second question is about the number 7 in mathematics. I haven't come across the importance of 7 in the mathematics used here. The numbers that come across as important obviously relate to specific Buddhist concepts and medical concepts. So 3 or 4 humours, 5 elements, 24 pachaya of causality, that kind of thing. So I haven't seen 7, I'm afraid. 0 is an important concept because it holds a place and allows things to move, as it were, allows for substitutions. But I haven't seen 7, I'm afraid. Thank you for your question.
Any more questions? On this side.
Hello, Dr. Kate. I was just curious, you talked about the medicine being delivered for the embryo on one or either side of the nostril depending on gender.
Mm-hmm.
So how would the gender be determined in vitro?
There were various practices used to change gender or to secure like a male or a female baby. And these partly involve delivery through the right to attract a male embryo or left to attract. They also used kind of small metal images placed either to the right or the left of the navel, depending on whether a male child or female child was desired. So how they actually determined which gender was in, I'm afraid I don't know.
ครับขอเป็นคำถามสุดท้ายนะครับ
Good afternoon. I am Mr. Somprasong. I am ancient medical doctor, and I know that meditation for healing. That I don't know that Boran meditation, the purpose of this is for healing or not. And the second question is, I met one doctors come and see me from Ubon. I know that he was very sick because of technology, computer and electrics. How can we use on this or Boran meditation for healing? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, let me recap. The first question again was, sorry, can you give the microphone back? Could you repeat the first question, please?
The first question is, the purpose of meditation is for healing or not? Boran meditation.
Okay, yeah. There are different ways that Boran meditation gets applied to healing. One is by a practitioner learning the meditation and using the nimitta, the visual lights and feelings, to purify parts of the body. So those nimitta are moved to the relevant part of the body to clarify blockages or imbalances in the dosa. And those, we have those evidence for those in royal manuscripts of Sukhaiturn. So Sangharat Sukhaiturn had used meditation both for the spiritual development and for the body. The other way you find Boran meditation used in healing is that advanced practitioners of Boran meditation are thought to be able to use that skill to purify the affected areas in the body of others as well. So that's the actual direct application to healing. But we also find just that the technology used for healing the body is also used for developing spiritual qualities within Boran meditation. As to your second question about how to use Boran meditation to treat somebody now suffering, that's not a question for me, that may be more of a question for yourself.
ครับก็คงจะสิ้นสุดไว้เพียงเท่านี้นะครับเพราะว่ากิจกรรมยังมีต่อเนื่องครับ
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Kate Crosby, for a fruitful knowledge for this conference. Thank you very much.
ขอเสียงปรบมือให้กับท่านศาสตราจารย์ดร. Kate Crosby นะครับขอบพระคุณครับท่านได้บรรยายในหัวข้อการสูญหายของการทำสมาธิวิชาธรรมกายและแบบโบราณระหว่างการปฏิรูปสมัยใหม่นะครับปรบมือดังๆให้กับท่านอีกสักครั้งหนึ่งนะครับ